On 10 June 1942, Dwight Eisenhower stood in London. Rain soaking his coat, absorbing a nation still fighting alone. He had crossed the Atlantic as an observer. Not yet a savior, carrying orders and quiet doubt. Britain in that moment was exhausted yet unbowed. Cities scarred by fire, people moving with stubborn routine. For 2 brutal years, this island had faced the Reich alone. While allies fell or hesitated, American generals arriving quietly. From Marshall's desk to Eisenhower's eyes, felt admiration mixed with unease. They toured bombed streets in London, met pilots with hollow stares, and heard sirens remembered by children. Eisenhower later admitted privately that Britain's endurance carried moral weight, heavier than divisions on maps. These visits were not ceremonial gestures. They were reckonings with sacrifice, measured in graves and resolve. Across Britain, from Plymouth to Hull, American officers sensed history pressing close, demanding decisions yet unmade. The war in 1942 still balanced on uncertainty, with Russia bleeding eastward and oceans contested. What struck these generals most was not British rhetoric or speeches, but the refusal to break. They saw shopkeepers reopen daily, despite rubble and ration cards, as if defiance were ordinary. This realization began reshaping American thinking about timing and responsibility, far beyond abstract strategy. Support for Britain was no longer theoretical, it felt personal and urgent, forged in shared danger. As night fell over London again, Eisenhower looked at darkened streets and understood America's coming role ahead. That understanding, born in silence and smoke, would soon pull the United States fully into Europe. By 3 August 1942, the mood inside British headquarters was tense yet cautiously expectant. American generals now arrived in greater numbers, not as visitors but as partners in waiting. Field Marshal Alan Brooke watched them closely, measuring confidence against experience. Shaped by earlier disasters, the British Army had survived Dunkirk, the Blitz, and isolation. Lessons carved into command culture. American officers, fresh and energetic, carried industrial promise, but lacked scars earned in retreat. This contrast created friction, subtle but constant, felt in planning rooms and late conversations. General George Marshall's directives echoed quietly, urging speed, urging commitment, urging trust. Yet Britain's leaders, having bled alone, feared reckless action could waste fragile survival. In London war rooms, maps spread wide, arrows debated, timelines questioned with guarded intensity. American generals listened to air raid memories, to naval losses, to cities reduced patiently. They realized Britain's caution was not fear, but memory speaking through strategy. Every proposed landing date carried ghosts of earlier failures, whispered by veterans. Eisenhower absorbed these tensions. Understanding command here meant balancing pride with humility. The Atlantic Wall loomed ahead, unknown and fortified. While politics pressed from Washington, Britain's endurance had earned moral authority, shaping Allied decisions more than American planners expected. In mess halls and dim offices, friendships formed slowly, over shared meals and shared doubts. The Americans learned Britain's war was not just fought abroad, but at home daily. That understanding deepened respect, altering how invasion plans were framed and delayed. As autumn approached in 1942, Allied unity hardened, tested by patience. The generals sensed history narrowing toward a single moment, demanding restraint before courage. What Britain had preserved alone was time itself, now handed carefully to America. On 11 November 1942, news from North Africa reached London with cautious relief. Operation Torch had begun, proving American forces could fight and learn under real fire. British commanders watched reports closely, weighing success against costly inexperience revealed early. American generals now faced combat reality, no longer shielded by distance or theory. Losses in Tunisia were sobering, tanks burned, units scattered, confidence shaken. Yet Britain's response was not scornful, but steady and corrective, born of hard memory. Veteran British officers shared lessons about coordination, patience, and respect for enemy strength. American generals listened differently now. Humbled by defeat, sharpened by responsibility. Eisenhower wrote candid notes, acknowledging British foresight and his own rapid education. The partnership deepened in adversity, not celebration, forming trust through shared failure. Britain's 2 years alone had taught survival before victory, endurance before glory. American officers began echoing this language, adjusting expectations back home quietly. Washington still demanded results, yet London insisted on readiness over headlines. In cold briefing rooms, discussions grew more honest, less national, more collective. The idea of a premature cross-channel assault faded slowly, replaced by deliberate buildup. British endurance had bought strategic depth, allowing America time to mature militarily. Generals now saw Britain differently, not as a weary ally, but as a living shield. The Blitz spirit, once romanticized, now appeared as disciplined civilian resistance. Factories hummed under blackout. Ports worked relentlessly, despite constant threat. This impressed American logisticians, who measured war in tons and schedules. They understood Britain had sustained modern war before America fully entered it. As winter settled in 1942, mutual respect replaced early skepticism. What Britain endured alone was shaping Allied victory, one hard lesson at a time. By January 1943, Allied leaders gathered again. This time with hardened expectations. The Casablanca Conference unfolded under tight security. Sunlit rooms masking grim discussions. American generals arrived changed, carrying North African scars and quieter confidence. British leaders sensed the shift, seeing learning replace impatience, humility temper ambition. Churchill moved deliberately, cigar smoke curling, voice steady with practiced persuasion. He spoke of endurance, of mistakes survived, of time as the most precious weapon. American generals listened intently, no longer dismissing British caution as delay. They now understood. Britain's 2 years alone had refined instincts Washington lacked. Every proposal for France was measured against blood already spilled, and blood yet required. Eisenhower observed these exchanges closely, absorbing leadership styles shaped by different wars. The British had defended homes, families, and cities, while Americans prepared expeditions. This difference mattered deeply, influencing risk tolerance and command decisions. Casablanca confirmed priorities. Germany first, but methodically, without reckless haste. American generals accepted postponement, recognizing readiness saved lives later. Behind closed doors, respect flowed quietly, unspoken but unmistakable. The idea of Britain as merely holding ground dissolved into recognition of guardianship. Britain had preserved a base, a population, and morale, essential for liberation. American planners now framed operations, assuming Britain's resilience as strategic foundation. Supply chains expanded across British ports, guarded by civilians who never stopped working. Every crate unloaded represented trust earned through earlier suffering. American generals walked airfields, watching British crews fly nightly missions. They saw exhaustion etched on faces, yet missions launched without complaint. This reinforced a truth: Britain had paid the war's entrance fee early. That payment granted authority, shaping Allied command balance quietly. As winter storms battered the Atlantic again, preparations continued steadily. The path to Europe was lengthening, but strengthening, with Britain at its core. American generals now spoke differently, acknowledging Britain's lonely stand openly. They knew history would judge who held the line when holding seemed impossible. On July 5, 1943, Allied momentum finally began to feel irreversible. Operation Husky launched across Sicily, marking a test of true partnership. American generals landed alongside British units, no longer divided by doubt. The beaches were contested, skies chaotic, coordination strained under fire. Yet lessons from Britain's lonely years guided restraint and persistence. British commanders emphasized method, consolidation, and steady pressure. American generals followed suit, resisting early urges for dramatic breakthroughs. Eisenhower managed tensions carefully, balancing egos hardened by national pride. Reports from the front revealed improvement. Fewer reckless losses, tighter command. The Americans noticed. British planning prioritized sustainability over spectacle. This reflected years of survival thinking, learned under constant threat. Civilians back in Britain followed Sicily's progress closely, hopeful but cautious. They understood victory demanded patience because defeat had once loomed near. American officers now appreciated this perspective, carrying it into their decisions. Every village taken in Sicily echoed Britain's earlier refusal to yield ground. German resistance remained fierce, but Allied cohesion slowly improved. British endurance had shaped operational culture, influencing how success was measured. American generals began praising British logistics, discipline, and adaptability openly. Statements once private now surfaced in official correspondence. They acknowledged Britain's solo stand as the foundation of coalition warfare. The campaign also revealed remaining gaps, reminding all, experience still mattered. Losses mounted, though manageable, reinforcing respect for enemy capability. As Sicily fell, strategic debates resumed, focused on Italy's vulnerability. Britain's earlier warnings about underestimating German defense carried weight. American planners listened, adjusting timelines and expectations accordingly. By late summer 1943, confidence grew, tempered by realism. The Americans no longer saw Britain as fading, but as forged by fire. That fire had burned longest before allies arrived and left lasting wisdom. In Sicily's dust and heat, American generals quietly admitted Britain had taught them war. By 9 September 1943, the war shifted again. As Allied forces pressed into Italy, the landings revealed brutal terrain. Narrow roads, mountains favoring the defender. American generals faced frustration, slow progress, and stubborn German resistance. British commanders recognized this pattern, having learned patience through earlier endurance. Italy became a grinding test, echoing Britain's own years of attrition. Every advance demanded coordination, artillery, air cover, and resolve. American officers now leaned heavily on British operational experience. Lessons from Britain's solo years guided supply planning and troop rotation. Eisenhower watched morale carefully, aware exhaustion could erode unity. British units, accustomed to long strain, maintained steadier pace under pressure. American generals noted this difference, respecting its origins in earlier isolation. Civilians in Britain followed Italian news, understanding costly progress well. They had endured stagnation before, when victory seemed distant. That memory informed British advice, urging persistence over dramatic gambles. At Salerno and later Anzio, Allied risks tested alliance cohesion sharply. British warnings about overextension proved prescient amid counterattacks. American commanders absorbed criticism, acknowledging Britain's earned authority. Conversations between officers grew franker, less guarded by national pride. The shared burden of casualties deepened mutual understanding further. Italy taught Americans that war rarely rewarded impatience. Britain's 2 years alone now appeared as a crucible of realism. Strategic patience, once frustrating, became respected doctrine. American generals began articulating this shift in letters home quietly. They spoke of British resilience as something learned, not innate. Every delay in Italy reminded them of Britain's earlier lonely stand. The alliance matured through hardship, not triumph. As autumn rains fell in 1943, progress slowed visibly. Yet Allied resolve held firm, anchored by lessons already paid for. Britain's endurance continued guiding choices, even when momentum faltered. The generals sensed Europe would demand even more before liberation came. On 15 February 1944, preparations for France reached their most fragile stage. Allied headquarters in Britain pulsed with urgency, secrecy, and constant debate. American generals now carried responsibility, shaped by years of shared struggle. They walked English airfields, ports, and camps, recognizing Britain's sustained effort. This island had become the arsenal and sanctuary for liberation. British civilians still lived under rationing, yet supported buildup without complaint. American officers noticed this quiet sacrifice, rarely acknowledged publicly. Eisenhower, now supreme commander, felt the weight of Britain's long endurance. Every decision for Normandy rested on foundations Britain built alone earlier. British commanders insisted on weather caution, timing precision, and deception mastery. These demands reflected survival instincts learned during years of isolation. American generals agreed, trusting experience over impatience now. The debate over timing revealed shared understanding rather than rivalry. Britain's 2 years alone had trained an entire nation for this moment. Ports functioned flawlessly, railways adapted, skies defended relentlessly. American planners marveled at Britain's transformation into a war machine. They understood such capacity emerged from necessity, not abundance. Letters home from American officers spoke of British steadiness and resolve. They admitted openly the invasion depended on Britain's earlier refusal to quit. As winter lingered, tension mounted across southern England. Troops trained endlessly, rehearsing landings under gray skies. British veterans offered advice, born from survival under bombardment. American soldiers listened attentively, sensing credibility forged by loss. The sense of shared fate replaced any lingering hierarchy. On maps, beaches were marked, but behind them lay human cost. British memory of standing alone sharpened focus on minimizing casualties. Eisenhower internalized this deeply, shaping final decisions. As spring approached, 1944, destiny narrowed toward a single day. American generals now spoke plainly. Britain had carried the war's heaviest silence. That silence had bought this chance to strike back together. On 6 June 1944, dawn crept slowly over the English Channel, heavy with fate. American generals stood aboard ships, watching gray water churn with purpose. Many remembered Britain's lonely years, as engines hummed and men waited silently. Eisenhower walked among soldiers earlier, carrying Britain's endurance in his mind. This invasion was American strength unleashed, yet built on British survival. British coastal villages watched fleets depart, knowing their vigil had mattered. For 2 long years, they had stood exposed, absorbing blows meant for others. Now that patience was transforming into movement, steel, and thunder. American generals listened to British naval officers, timing tides precisely. Every calculation reflected hard memory, earned when mistakes once meant annihilation. As ramps dropped in Normandy, chaos erupted, smoke, screams, and surf colliding. American commanders faced reality, courage met by lethal resistance immediately. British experience echoed in every order. Press unsteadily, secure gains methodically. Losses mounted quickly, reminding all, victory was never guaranteed. Yet behind the beaches, Britain's quiet contribution endured invisibly. Airfields launched endless sorties, ports waited to receive wounded. British civilians followed reports anxiously, understanding invasion pain intimately. They had lived through bombardment, uncertainty, and isolation already. American generals on the beaches now felt gratitude sharpened by fear. They knew without Britain's refusal to surrender earlier, this day could not exist. As footholds formed, Allied momentum grew fragile but real. Commanders coordinated across accents, ranks, and traditions seamlessly. The alliance, once cautious, now functioned instinctively under fire. Eisenhower received updates steadily, weighing progress against mounting cost. British advisors remained close, urging patience amid chaos. Their voices carried authority, shaped by years of solitary endurance. By nightfall, Normandy held, precariously but undeniably. American generals assessed maps, exhausted yet resolute. They spoke quietly of Britain's earlier stand, no longer abstract history. That stand had delivered this moment, bought with time and suffering. As the channel darkened again, the war's balance shifted irrevocably. Yet liberation had only begun, demanding endurance once more. By 18 August 1944, Allied forces surged through France. Momentum finally breathing freely. American generals moved inland, watching German lines fracture under relentless pressure. Yet victory still felt fragile, shaped by memories of earlier uncertainty. British units advanced steadily, methodical, never assuming collapse meant surrender. That caution, born during Britain's years alone, tempered Allied optimism. American commanders now echoed this mindset, resisting overconfidence openly. Paris was liberated, crowds erupted. But generals measured celebration carefully. They knew war punished complacency, as Britain had learned early. Supply lines stretched dangerously. Ports struggled, weather threatened progress. British logisticians warned of strain, recalling past moments near disaster. American generals listened closely, respecting experience forged under isolation. In briefing rooms, Britain's lonely stand resurfaced in conversation repeatedly. It was spoken of now, with gratitude rather than abstraction. Eisenhower emphasized unity, reminding officers how fragile coalition success remained. The advance toward Germany revealed fierce resistance still ahead. British commanders urged consolidation, mindful of earlier hard lessons. American generals balanced pressure from Washington against realities on the ground. They had learned, haste without preparation cost lives unnecessarily. Belgium and the Netherlands loomed ahead, terrain complex, enemy entrenched. Every town reclaimed, echoed Britain's earlier defiance during dark days. American officers walking liberated streets reflected on Britain's survival. Had Britain fallen, none of this momentum could exist. That realization reshaped how success was interpreted emotionally. The war was no longer about proving strength, but honoring sacrifice. British civilians followed the advance quietly, aware victory still demanded restraint. They had seen reversals before, when hope arrived too soon. American generals now shared that emotional discipline. Plans for crossing into Germany intensified, shaped by caution and resolve. The alliance moved forward deliberately, hardened by shared cost. As summer waned in 1944, optimism grew cautiously. Behind every advance, Britain's earlier endurance remained a silent guide. Victory seemed nearer, but humility stayed close. On 8 May 1945, silence replaced gunfire across Europe. Heavy and disbelieving, American generals stood in ruined cities, absorbing victory shaped by countless losses. They reflected quietly on how Britain had stood alone when others fell away. That memory felt sharper now, framed by survival rather than celebration. Eisenhower addressed officers, acknowledging endurance before triumph explicitly. He spoke of Britain's refusal to quit as the war's moral hinge. British commanders listened, knowing words carried weight earned through years of strain. The war had proven, patience often mattered more than power. American generals wrote home, describing Britain's lonely stand with reverence. They admitted openly that victory began before America arrived. Cities across Britain marked peace cautiously, shaped by long familiarity with loss. Celebrations were muted, gratitude mixed with remembrance. American officers visiting British towns noticed resilience still present. Shops reopened, routines resumed, scars remained quietly visible. The alliance, forged through hardship, had reshaped global power permanently. Yet beneath strategy and maps, human endurance defined the outcome. Britain's 2 years alone delayed collapse, preserved hope, and bought time. American generals understood this fully, only at war's end. Their earlier doubts transformed into lasting respect. History would later debate numbers, divisions, and industrial output. Those who were there remembered something simpler. They remembered a nation that refused to surrender when surrender seemed inevitable. That refusal changed everything that followed. As flags flew across liberated Europe, gratitude lingered beneath triumph. American generals carried Britain's example forward into a new world order. The war's lessons were written not only in victories, but in endurance. Britain had paid first and longest in the currency of survival. That truth endured beyond medals, speeches, and monuments. On that quiet day in 8 May 1945, understanding finally settled. Victory had many authors, but perseverance wrote the opening chapter.